Hi, and welcome to Postscript. I'm John Peterson from the Arlington Institute. It's nice to have you with us here on this Saturday afternoon in September. We're coming to you from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, our little resort town just down the road from Baltimore and Washington. And every month or so, we have a speaker series that features some wonderful people that come from many places in the world and in the country to talk about the extraordinary change that's going on in this planet right now. This kind of transition to a new world. It's got new humans and a new world that's coming downstream, and more change than probably anyone's seen in recorded history, or at least that's the way it looks to me. And so we feature on a monthly basis the wonderful people that come and are part of our program. And today we've got two great folks who've come over from Baltimore for us, Dr. Brian Sanderoff and Dr. Carrie Hempel. Brian and Carrie are two different kinds of doctors. Brian is a pharmacist, and Carrie is an osteopathic physician. And they're with us today to talk about cannabis because they're on the leading edge in Maryland in the applications and uses of cannabis for medicinal kind of purposes, which is a huge kind of thing that has great implications. And so we're really great. It's nice to have the two of you here with us. And Carrie, tell us a little bit about, this is not like smoking dope, right?
No.
Okay.
Thankfully,
Good.
we've evolved past that,
All right.
beyond that, further into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so basically, as cannabis continues to evolve in modern times, we're seeing a lot of different applications for it. We know that it's been used for thousands of years by our ancient ancestors.
What do they use it for? What is it?
Well, we have a lot of different ideas about that. Brian's going to talk later today about different things that have been found, different artifacts, and different types of evidence.
Sure, but how do you use it?
Oh, how do I use it
Yeah.
in my practice?
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, my practice, I practice several different types of medicine.
Mhm.
So I have a background in critical care, and I also do some hospice care. So through those, as my career has evolved, I've gotten used to taking care of very sick people
Right.
with lots of different medical problems. And I've seen that across the spectrum, throughout all the courses of their illness, they're dealing with a constellation of severe symptoms that tends to evolve and fluctuate. And we have yet to find in medicine certain types of medicine that can soothe the symptoms of severe illness and possibly alter the course. Things like pain and nausea and anxiety, poor appetite.
Broad kind. It's really lots of applications, right?
That's right. Yeah. So all areas of the body, are really affected, and including our mental health, our emotional and spiritual health. We become very distracted and preoccupied by our pain and by our worry. And so it's very hard to be present and, enjoy a good quality of life when you're dealing with serious illness.
Well, cannabis and hemp and marijuana as kind of a species, I guess, has extraordinary broad spectrum of kind of applications in the hemp space, which is now legal in West Virginia. I mean, you build houses with it. I mean, it's to say clothing, all kinds of amazing kind of stuff. And so, it kind of goes from these hard kind of applications for wearable, durable building kind of materials over through the entertainment kind of stuff, if you will, and over into the medicinal side, which is where you guys are. And kind of you're the expert on how that works. How does that...
Yeah, so it's really interesting, John. As it turns out, there's a whole system of receptor sites in the body that's called the endocannabinoid system. I didn't learn about it in my pharmacy school, but I figured, I went to school in the 80s. We just didn't know about that stuff. I taught a lecture last year to third-year pharmacy students, and I said, who in here has heard of the endocannabinoid system? 3 people raised their hand. And it's just astounding to me. Recently, NIH came out with a statement saying that 98% of all human disease, one way or another, is related to this set of receptor sites.
Wow. Are they in your brain? Where are they?
Everywhere. throughout your CNS, your central nervous system, in your brain, your organs, your skin,
Oh, wow.
immune function. It's everywhere in the body except for the part of the brain that controls respiration. That's why cannabis is so safe. You can't overdose from cannabis. Literally,
Wow,
you can't
wow,
overdose from it.
wow.
This whole system is
You're
designed.
obviously, now we're talking about the medical side.
Now we are, yeah.
right.
This whole system is designed to return function to normal. There's a term that we learned in medicine that's
Wow.
called homeostasis. And
Yeah.
so, it's basically the body's ability to adjust the internal environment based on what they're experiencing from the outside environment. And that's why this can look like a miracle cure, because we say it treats pain or anxiety or sleep or immune function or whatever, but really what it's doing is returning function to normal. And so for you, it may be that a certain system is out of whack and it can help return it to normal. For someone else, it could be a completely different system. And, in my career in the herbal nutritional world, I had a lot of people come to me and say, hey, I've got the new miracle cure. This is good. And I used to tell people, if someone tells you they have a miracle cure, run the other way, because there's no such thing. This comes the closest that I've seen in my practice to actually really addressing. And it's because it doesn't necessarily treat pain or treat anxiety. It returns function to normal, whether that's immune function, brain chemistry, how your body handles, energy, sugar issues, gut
Really?
issues. Yeah, it really is fascinating.
Well, really want to talk about that. Maybe we can kind of. This is a new understanding of an old set of relationships that plants and animals and humans have all used in the past, right?
Yeah, and to me, the fascinating thing is we can kind of look at the last 80 years of prohibition when we really weren't allowed to use this medicine, and what has happened to our health during that time. As a society, it's gone downhill, sometimes drastically. Now, I'm not saying that's the only factor,
Yeah, sure.
but it certainly is a factor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now we're trying to come out of that area. And so right now I think cannabis is legal in 36 or 38 states now in some form or another. And, I believe before next year, before the next presidential election, the federal government's going to deschedule it, take it off of Schedule 1 so that it actually is available more wide range. You'll also notice that Carrie and I both use the term cannabis.
Yes.
When you say the term marijuana, it automatically
I know.
turns some keys with people. And so we're trying to change that conversation and have people think about it, at least for the work that we do, in medical terms instead of getting high terms.
Well, I don't have a lot of experience in this space, and
We can hook you up.
yeah. Oh, great.
Good.
Brownies, right? No, but no. I had a friend in San Francisco. Really classy guy. He was a world-class industrial designer and all that kind of stuff, and had back problems. And he was using this stuff. It was the only thing he could find to deal with the kind of the pain and stuff that he had in his back. And so that was the first, and that was quite a while ago, but that was the first that I'd ever been exposed to the notion of the kind of the broad spectrum applications of this kind of.
I can't tell you. So I run a dispensary. We've been open for 1.5 years now. So before that time, I could tell you what the study said up from the ivory tower of reading this and that. Now I have 1.5 years of practical experience using this with patients. And I can't tell you how many people that we have off of their opioids from using cannabis.
Wow.
And it doesn't work the same way that typical Western medicines do. Generally, if you have a pain problem and you go to your doctor, one way or another, you're going to get something to numb that pain. Cannabis doesn't numb, and most people who have used cannabis understand that it actually makes you more sensitive to things. And so when you use cannabis for pain, although they do have the cannabinoids have a minor effect on opioid receptors as well, what it's doing is actually allowing you to forge a different relationship with that pain, which oftentimes is what allows it to dissipate. It really is fascinating.
That's interesting. Now, you guys, your dispensary, right?
Mm-hmm.
You grow your own?
The company that I work for is completely integrated. So we have a license in Maryland to grow, to process, and a
So
dispensary.
you got greenhouses or something, or what?
All indoor. We have
Oh,
a
it's in-
56,000 square foot facility
Wow.
that is unbelievable, high tech. The GMP certified. I mean,
So the quality, so you've got quality
unbelievable.
control,
Yeah,
full
yeah.
spectrum.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And we sell products from other manufacturers as well. I mean, the regulations in Maryland are such that if you're using a product that's legally made and sold in Maryland, you can be assured it's tested properly and it has in it what
So
it
what
says.
kind of products are there? I mean,
Well, there's a wide variety now because not everybody can smoke and not everybody wants to smoke.
Right.
Or shouldn't, exactly. So the way cannabis is processed and the way we're working with it now, the processors can make lots of different formulations. So it comes in capsules or tablets, tinctures that can go underneath the tongue, and even topical applications. There are people...
Gummy bears.
Edibles is an entirely,
Yeah.
a different realm that's coming to Maryland, but people are getting really creative with it. We have patients.
But it all does the same thing, right?
Different ways, though.
Oh, different way.
Yeah, so there are advantages and disadvantages to all of the different
Oh, I
ways that
see.
you can get it in your body. So if you smoke it, advantage is hits you like that. Lungs, bloodstream, brain, and you'll feel the effect in a minute or two. The effect will last for a couple hours. Downside, really hard to dose. I can tell you what the percentages of cannabinoids are in what you're smoking, but the dose that you're getting, there's so many different variables, how hard you're drawing, your lung capacity, all that sort of stuff. Tinctures, you'll feel that effect, getting absorbed through the mucosa in the mouth. You'll feel that effect in 15 to 20 minutes. The effect will last for a few hours. The pharmacist in me loves that dosage form because I can give you a very exact dose. I can give you a 0.5 milligram of THC and CBD or whatever. Edibles are another story. We call them consumables because technically edibles really aren't available in Maryland yet, but there are consumables. There are tablets and capsules and elixirs and medical chews. You might call them gummies. We call them medical chews. So when you absorb it through the gut, because of the first pass effect where it goes from the gut into the bloodstream right to the liver will transform THC, which is the one ingredient that really can give you that euphoric effect.
Yeah.
It'll transform it into something that is actually 5 to 10 times more potent. And so you might not feel the effect for an hour or an hour and a half, but that effect can last 6, 8, 10, 12 hours. So when you're talking about chronic pain, when you're talking about sleep, chronic anxiety, it's a really popular way to dose it. You just have to understand the effect and how you do it.
That's kind of interesting.
It's very interesting.
Where do you think it's going?
Oof. Big business, unfortunately or fortunately. I mean, the way things work in our world, this will be the largest growth industry probably for the next 5 years in this country. And as soon as legal things start to change with it, like they're about to pass a law legally with the banking, so that way banks can now, so people will be able to use their Visa and MasterCards to be able to purchase that. And banks will be able to give business loans to companies. As soon as that happens, and as soon as the federal government relaxes their clamps on cannabis, you're going to see, you're going to see the big tobacco companies, you're going to see the big alcohol companies come in because
pharma guys are, they'll be in there.
Yeah, and so, but it's huge business, and there will always be those little boutique companies and those boutique growers that make specific sort of products that meet a need, just like there are in other industries, like the microbrew kind of model.
Sure,
right?
and can you engineer these products for certain kind of applications?
Yes, yeah, there are. So there are. When I started studying this 3 years ago, it was said that there were 70 or 80 phytocannabinoids. Now it's over 100.
Oh.
We are in the infancy of this as a science, and yes, you can engineer products or manufacture products that feature more of a certain cannabinoid. So you know about THC, that's the one that people equate to. A lot of news about CBD, especially hemp-derived CBD, which you can get without a prescription.
CBD means?
CBD.
What does it stand for?
Yeah.
Cannabidiol.
Say it again?
Cannabidiol. So that's a specific phytocannabinoid, THC, tetrahydrocannabinol.
Okay.
So there's another one that's called CBN. Okay. CBN specifically helpful for sleep.
Christian Broadcasting Network.
Right. Specifically helpful for sleep. There's one called THCV, which has been studied to help with like energy issues, diabetes. There's one called CBG, which is specifically helpful for gut issues. So people that have, Crohn's, IBS, chronic nausea, especially cancer patients that are under treatment, things that have higher amounts of CBG are very helpful for that.
So tell us some stories. How do you use this, and how has it affected some of your patients?
Change the names to protect the innocent.
Yeah, right.
Well, I first started working with cannabis through my hospice work, and probably the biggest impact I saw was in that population, because those folks are very medically frail, very complicated illnesses. They're in the various states of end of life and organ failure, and trying to manage all of the total body and mind symptoms that come with that are incredibly distressing. And in the hospice world, it takes teams of people that are specially trained to provide care to those families and patients. One of the biggest challenges is that the medical tools available to manage symptoms in people who are terminally ill generally involve side effects that are very strong. Opioid pain medications, benzodiazepines and sedatives, muscle relaxers, they each carry with them a laundry list of side effects that mimics or even makes the symptoms of the illness worse.
And it can be worse when you have organ failure that doesn't allow you to clear those things from your blood.
Yeah, and it's incredibly distressing for families to administer these medications. There's a lot of moral and religious, and just ethical distress at administering medicines that you're watching and concerned that may be hastening your loved one's death. There's a lot at play there. And so when cannabis became available as a tool in Maryland, I had been kind of watching it all along in other states. And when I was able to finally work with it, I was able to see significant impact on patients and their quality of life.
Like what?
For example, probably one of the most dreaded forms of illness is pancreatic cancer. And in the setting I worked in an inpatient hospice center, that's generally where the folks with the most severe symptoms come, who need the most care. So I was able to see those people day to day in real time. And we started giving them cannabis for their pain, their nausea, their vomiting, their anxiety. And I was able to see people start eating. I was able to see people go home, and not necessarily, I can't prove or say that they lived longer, but the time that they had left, rather than being in our facility, confined to a bed, on a drip, or sedated by medications, those folks were ambulatory, eating with their families, home for the holidays.
Wow.
Really, the quality of life improvement that I saw was astounding. And I had a gentleman with melanoma that had spread throughout his entire body, who managed his pain and symptoms with cannabis. He only required opioids in the final 2 days of his life, and he was able to be at home with his family until then. So I've seen some really amazing things.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
It's one of the reasons that I am so passionate about this. My mother went through hospice care, a year before this was available. And being the pharmacist in the family, as she was home for hospice care, I'm the one that got to give her those meds, the Ativan and the Haldol and the morphine. And her end was quick, and it was not pleasant to see what she was going through in dealing with all of those side effects. And if cannabis had been available legally, I believe that her transition would have been so much more humane.
And obviously, it has applications in other kind of spaces. So pain control, right?
Absolutely. So I kind of expanded the work I was doing with cannabis as a result of what I saw in hospice. So now I have a practice where I see lots of different types of patients.
Mm-hmm.
But by and large, the most common symptom is pain.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these folks have been in pain management and are struggling with opioids and just not making progress and not feeling better, but getting deeper into that. And the opioid situation in the country is definitely another highly concerning.
How about neurology and those kinds of things? I mean, can it help you see the world better?
Well, there are definite applications. There's a lot of interest in that in terms of mental illness, and different types of neurologic illnesses for sure. So it's being looked at for things like PTSD, and specifically the veteran population.
Sure.
Things like just anxiety and depression and mood disorders. In addition to that, the full spectrum of neurologic
What
disorders.
about dementia and things like
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, dementia, movement disorders like Parkinsonism, ALS,
Wow.
MS is one of the big ones. Yep. So neuropathic pain, nerve pain, which is just rampant among people with diabetes, people going through cancer treatment, develop painful nerve damage. So the applications are just
Yeah.
limitless.
I'm sure the big pharmacy companies just love this, don't they?
They see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
I think that they do. And so, their bent on life is to try to find a medicine, alter it chemically so it's something that they can own. And what they still don't seem to get is that when you alter that chemical, it changes the way it works in the body, and you may be concentrating on one thing.
Oh,
And
you
then,
mean it works the way it works because of the way?
Right.
Oh,
Exactly. And so the way nature provided it. And
Yeah,
so,
right.
but they see the writing on the wall. And so it wouldn't surprise me to see pharmaceutical companies start to get into this space as well. It's all about turf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you got any kind of ideas about where that's kind of how that goes in the next, say, 5 years?
I think that 5 years from now, it's legal throughout the country, every state, and each state may have their own laws about it, but it'll be legal. Many states will allow state-to-state transport, which right now is illegal. And so, we're a company that wants to expand, and so we want to be in other states. We can't grow in Maryland and ship it to New Jersey or Ohio or Pennsylvania. You have to have your own grow and process facility in each state right now.
The plant knows it's in Maryland,
It
right?
does,
You
right.
know, it just
Right,
can't-
exactly. So, you can look at prohibition of alcohol back in the 30s. And,
Yeah.
and there's sort of a nice parallel there.
How about other countries? What are Canada now is
Fully legal for adult use as well as medical. Costa Rica is making some really interesting changes in allowing growers to grow for local use and for export to other places. Israel, they've been doing research on cannabis since the 60s. In fact, the guy who discovered THC is an Israeli researcher.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And, there are some European countries, Australia, I mean, all over the world, people are starting to recognize the use of this. Re-recognize is the way I like to say it.
Tell me about the plant and how it works. There's an active part of it, right? And then can you use the other pieces, or how does this?
Yeah, so so there are two categories of components that have medical implications.
I mean, I obviously don't know anything.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna fix that. So there are cannabinoids, and these are things like THC and CBD, and there's a whole other class of chemicals which are called terpenes. Those are volatile, and that's what gives a plant an aroma. So you've smelled terpenes before. You've smelled lavender. What you're smelling is a terpene that's called linalool. And it's calming. That's why people drink lavender tea or use lavender essential oil. Well, a lot of strains of cannabis have linalool in it as well, and those are the strains that have a tendency to be more calming that you would use for sleep or anxiety. So those plants grow, those components are in the oil part of the cannabis plant, which grows on what we call the flower. And you can actually see, if you are looking at it really close, these little structures, which are called trichomes, which contain that oil in it.
Huh.
And so that's what ultimately you're trying to get. Now, some of those trichomes will be on the small leaves that are near the flower as well. They're called sugar leaves. They look frosty, and that's where the medicine is. Interestingly enough,
On the leaves, not
on
the
the
flower.
small leaves and in the flower, but most of it's concentrated in the flower part of it, because that's
Is
what
there anything in the use?
in those big fan leaves, not as much. There are some people who will use some of that, and some of that may be used for processing to try to extract some of the cannabinoids, but it's not a rich source of it like the
Do you
flowers.
need bees or anything?
Interestingly enough, no. Now, again, not having experience with pot back in the day, Those of us who do used to remember when we'd buy a dime bag from, whoever, and then we'd have to pull the seeds out of it. Today in the marketplace, you don't find seeds in things because we weed out the males. The males get taken out of the grow, and this accomplishes I know.
Yeah.
It accomplishes what it does is it gets the females to put out more of their oils and their terpenes because they're trying to attract the males that aren't there.
Yeah, right.
And so it
Well,
actually
there's a
makes
happy ending to
yeah,
this.
and it actually makes the plants, more potent.
Right.
In our grow facility, the guy who heads up our grow is a genius, and he controls every aspect of the environment: the light, the temperature, the humidity, when the light's on and off.
Yeah.
And what we do is maximize the genetic expression of what we're growing.
Someday I want to come visit you.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You have to get all
Okay,
suited
well,
up
we're
and everything.
delightful conversation. We're going to come back and talk more about
Cool.
kind of historically and broadly the applications and how what's this mean for the evolution of humanity?
Now we're getting
excited. Yeah. And so I hope that you'll come back and be with us in the second segment that we do here. This is Postscript, and we're glad that you're here with us. We do this once a month here in Berkeley Springs, our little resort town that's just 100 miles from Washington and Baltimore, and we hope you'll come down and visit us. You can find out all about our speaker series, where these good folks come from, is at transitiontalks.org, and we'd love to have you with us. We've got a wonderful lineup going into the way into next year of wonderful people. So thanks. I'm John Peterson. This is Postscript.